Hello, you guys. I'm growing increasingly tired with progressive discourse. Um, this week on the internet, there has been a spark in conversation around biphobia amongst straight women.
So I've been receiving a lot of pushback in response to my video about noob and bisexual erasure, and a lot of women are upset by the things that I said. So allow me to just clarify a couple things. First things first is I've been seeing a lot of women say, "Oh, it's always you people trying to push bisexual men onto us and police our bodies." So besides the fact that y'all already proved my point that a lot of y'all are just simply homophobic with the "you people" rhetoric, no one is forcing you to do anything. We're simply calling out a mindset that is very much rooted in homophobia. And for a lot of y'all to be using the "no means no" phrase to defend this mindset is insane. Equating calling out homophobia to SA is insane. Are we well? And I've even seen a lot of women defend this mindset saying like, "Oh, well, I don't want to date bisexual men because I don't want to date effeminate men," as if those two things are at all the same. I literally point out in my video how I feel like I, as a gay man, can tell off first glance that noob is attracted to men to some extent, but a lot of women, especially the ones who claim to not want to date bisexual men, would not be able to had he not been open about his sexuality or very obvious in his expression of his sexuality. Therefore, being feminine or possessing effeminate qualities or the lack thereof to a certain extent is not the issue. Furthermore, there are bisexual men in this world who are not feminine and do not possess effeminate qualities. Therefore, you would not be able to tell that they are bisexual. I have met bisexual men in real life that I couldn't even tell were bisexual until they told me, and that's after seeing them walk, hearing them talk, seeing them move, and who they hang out with, which is why I said a lot of times women will end up dating DL men because they could not tell the difference between the two. Should men be more open about their sexuality and honest up front? Of course. But are women largely perpetuators of homophobia and thus reinforce the stereotype and this idea that men should stay in the closet? Yes. Of course, but at the end of the day, no one is saying you can't have preferences. But if your preferences are solely a sexual identity and not even a physical expression loosely tied to that sexual identity, that is homophobic. And if you don't want to date bisexual men because you feel like as a man dating another man automatically makes you feminine, that is emasculating, and that is homophobic. What is not clicking? And I've even seen a lot of women say like, "Oh, well, it's like not wanting to date a trans person." So no, and I'm not even gonna get too deep into that conversation because I'm not the most educated in that field. But what I will say is, depending on the reasoning, that would still be transphobic. So what are we talking about? And on a similar note, a lot of people think I'm talking about just straight women. I'm not. I'm talking about a plethora of women. I've even seen bisexual women who won't even date bisexual men, which is more closely related to people who won't even date people within their same race, if anything. And I've also been seeing a lot of homophobic women in my comments talking about why are you even worried about a dating pool that you're not a part of? Oh, maybe because I have basic human empathy and I want everyone to have a fair chance at love and happiness. Have you ever thought about that? And on top of that, bisexual people are still a part of my community, so therefore I will defend them for that reason alone. Like, what are we talking about? And lastly, there's been a lot of people saying like, "Oh, well, it's not all women, so we can't generalize," obviously, which is why I said things like a lot of women or women oftentimes. Like, I try to not speak in absolutes and save room for nuance and outliers, but if you can't recognize that, that's simply just a literacy issue. Like, sorry, God bless.
And the conversation has completely spiraled out of hand. Now it's women are biphobic, women are homophobic because they don't want to date bisexual men. Now, I want to go ahead and start this conversation with a disclaimer. A lot of women are homophobic. Like, let's just be clear as fuck. Like, a lot of women are very homophobic. A lot of women think that being with a man makes you less of a man. They think that, if you're topping or bottoming, that makes you effeminate. They think some men have STDs, STIs, blah, 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 blah. Yes. Some women are extremely homophobic and they have a negative connotation with being associated with the LGBTQ and being in same sex relationships. They do. They do. But I don't think that not dating bisexual men makes women homophobic. I don't. Um, Sex is about sexual activity, and please don't pay attention to what I do with my legs. I'm tall, boo. Anyways, um, sex isn't just about identity. I think that the LGBTQ, and all these gender studies majors, honestly, I'm starting to become very gender studies critical. Like, I'm starting to not really fuck with people who study too much gender studies and women's studies. I think them people have done everything but study fucking history, sociologically, in the political landscape, and that bothers me. But let's be clear, sexuality is not just about who you're attracted to, but it's about what sexual acts you're attracted to. So for me, and feel free to read my Substack. I've written 2 Substack articles about this, and I am gonna write some more. But for me, when I think about um sex, I'm thinking about sexual acts. I'm thinking about what sexual acts that you're engaging in and what sexual acts I would engage in and be comfortable with my partner engaging in. And I am uncomfortable with a man that I want to be with, that I want to procreate with, engaging in same-sex activities. It's just not physically attracted to me. And honestly, I want to like bring some nuance to this conversation, because I actually like, I think a lot of people just think, oh, like women think that it's disgusting that men are fucking each other in the ass and giving each other oral. I don't really think that. Like I don't think that. At one point, no, actually no, I never thought that. Like I was trying to think if I ever really had those type of thoughts, but I don't even have those type of thoughts. I just cannot conceptualize a man that I'm attracted to being with a man. Like period. Like, and people are like, it's rooted in insecurity, it's rooted in this and that. And I'm like, well, let it be rooted in that. Let's let it be what it is. If that's what it is what it is. But I don't have any negative thoughts about um like men who sleep with men. I just don't want my man doing it. And there are certain sexual acts that I would never engage in. I think I talk about this often. I'm not sex positive. I'm not sexually fluid. I'm not, I'm vanilla. I think that's the best way that I can say it. I'm very fucking vanilla. Sex with me is amazing, but it is very structured and rooted in sensuality. Like I'm a very sensual lover, not a very freaked out, let's try everything under the book kinky ass lover. No thank you. Okay, it is very heteronormative in my bedroom, and you are in my bedroom. So it, for me, it's about touch, it's about sensation, but I'm not into trying any new sexual acts. And so I want a partner who participates in the same sexual acts that I do. So there's going to be a lot of things that I think that bisexual people are, and you're like, oh, that's a stereotype. You're assuming what sexual acts that they're participating in. If he touching a man, period, is not for me. You know what I mean? And I just don't get how that's homophobia. When I think about homophobia and biphobia, and I'm just like, I really just want y'all to stop using all these catch-all terms, because they are problematic. Because when y'all dwindle down words like homophobia, biphobia, bigotry, right? They lose meaning and people stop taking them seriously. So for me, when I think about homophobia, when I think about biphobia, I'm thinking about people who hate these people, who think down on these people, who think less of these people, who think these people don't deserve rights, they don't deserve freedoms, they don't deserve to exist. That's what I think about when I think about phobias, or I think about irrational fear. I don't have a fear. I don't have a hatred. I don't have a dislike. I just don't want it in my bedroom. Okay. And I don't equate having to date someone as having to participate in relational or um I don't equivalent to having to be with them. And so to me, that's a major overstep. I think people are confusing um intolerance with incompatibility, or they're confusing personal autonomy for bigotry. And that's a problem for me. I'm not a bigot. I'm not intolerant, and I don't want to see anybody spoken down on. And I don't think less than anybody of anybody. But I do think women specifically, we have so much more risks associated. And I know y'all hate hearing the word risk when talking about this conversation, because you feel like that's making me, you feel like I'm saying that men are dirty. First of all, I don't care what type of man. Most men are dirty. Like, what are we talking about? This is the part that y'all lose me. You're saying all bisexual men are dirty. Straight men are dirty. What are you talking about? I wouldn't touch the average straight man with a 50-foot pole. Most straight men are off my dating pool. Most straight men are not a part of my dating pool. What are we talking about? There are so many men amongst straight men that would never get a chance with me. Let's go ahead and create some more phobias. I'm broke nigga phobic. Okay? I'm jobless nigga phobic. Okay? Okay? I'm carless nigga phobic. Okay? I got a lot of motherfucking phobias. I'm 5'8" and below phobic. I don't date them kind. I got a lot of motherfucking phobias. If everything is a fucking phobia to y'all, Go ahead and put some more motherfucking phobias on my name because I might just be that. I'll be that. But I don't like being associated with bigotry or hatred, really, because I think it's unnecessary. And I also think that it's very divisive for absolutely no reason, right? Other than the fact that y'all want access to women that y'all don't wouldn't normally have access. But newsflash! Most men don't have access to me, boo. Okay, I'm a fucking gem, love. Most men don't have access to me. Most men don't have access to women. So it's not gonna change for you bisexuals. Anyways, so yes, I think that people are, when the LGBTQT is talking about um like sexuality, they're talking about identity. They're thinking that you're rejecting their identity. You're a bigot. You don't want to be with them. You're it's who they are. But I'm not rejecting who you are. I'm rejecting what you do, right? What you do, which is male sex. Do, which is male sex. Clear, it's not in my personal life. Like, I think it's so crazy that people are like, in order to support people, you have to like integrate them into every part of your life. I don't think that's true. I support sex workers. I support drug dealers. I support scammers, but I don't associate with scammers. I don't associate with drug dealers, and I don't associate with sex workers. Right? I can support your need to do what you have to do to survive without being personally affiliated. And I do think that there's a difference. You know what I'm saying? Um, it's not the same. Like, having someone within your personal boundaries is not the same. You know, I supported a lot of my coworkers at work. We would never hang out outside of work. You know, that's just the reality of it. But I want to talk about um some history here, because there is a lot of things that I think that people don't understand about sexuality, about history, and about fluidity, that I think that are very important to this conversation. So for one, let's just talk about the fact that sexuality as an identity is a modern concept. Okay, it's only existed for like 150 years. The concept of being homosexual, bisexual, uh heterosexual has only existed for about 150 years. And I can't remember the name of the doctor. I think his name was Carl. It's like a German psychiatrist or something, activist, who created the term homosexuality so he could create what he said, a new species of man. But basically he did it to protect them from persecution, right? During that time, there were a slew of anti-sodomy laws, anti-prostitution laws, anti-homosexuality laws, that were being passed. And so in his mind, he thought that he could create a new species. That was his words, not mine. And that would help protect them from persecution, or it would help eradicate the laws that were being placed against their types of relationships. Um, so the concept of sexuality as identity is a much new concept. One that I don't think is really rooted in anything, which is why y'all are always saying that sexuality is fluid. If sexuality is fluid, that means that sexuality is not real. And so that brings me back to my next point, is that before sexuality, there were just sex acts. It wasn't about what who you were attracted to, it was about what you did and who you did it with, right? That was it wasn't an identity. Sex was just sexuality. You was either getting penetrated, you was doing the penetrating, right? For most of history, sex has been viewed as a form of domination. Who's ever being penetrated was the person in power. Sex has always been about power. And that's why I think that these conversations get lost, because we still live in a patriarchal system. So inherently, sex is still about power, because we haven't dismantled the patriarchy. We've just changed hands. Like, it's just changed hands of who runs the patriarchy. So in a lot of ways, sex is still just about power. Okay. There are a lot of sex acts, and everyone's not going to be comfortable with the same sex acts. And I think this is very interesting. And I wrote about this in my Substack article, and I really want y'all to read it. It's called The Only Ones Who Aren't Asked, or and the only ones not playing, right? It's two essays that I think work in tangent to explain this biphobia conversation. And I think it'll add a lot of nuance to the conversation. But when we're talking about the LGBTQ community and we're talking about identity and sexual acts, they have created an entire lexicon of sexual act based identities. Okay? When you think of LGBTQ, you got your tops, you got your bottoms, you got your verses, you got your sides. Just found out about the side, by the way. Didn't know about that one. That's new to me. Okay. I just found out about that one. That's the interesting one for me. But yes, and then you got the lesbians, you got your cult, your stone tops, you got your pillow princesses, you got your femmes, you got your masks, all of that stuff, right? And y'all have created a language around sexual compatibility. So you know which sexual acts that you're comfortable. A bottom, is never comfortable topping. A topping ain't never comfortable bottoming. But from what I've heard, somebody's top is always somebody else's bottom. I don't know. That's just the word on the street right now. I don't know. None of my business either. But so the LGBTQT community has a lexicon of words to describe sex-based acts and identities, right? So when you are sorting through what type of man that you're attracted to, you already know based off of what he goes by, basically, right? And so a lot of times tops only date bottoms, don't mass lesbians only date femmes, and y'all already have sorted yourselves into these presentation based, sexual acts based identities. That lexicon of words does not exist for the heterosexual community. Okay. We won't know who's a eater, who's a beater, who's a rider until we get to talking to them, because there's not a language that exists for that. But that creates a clear distinction between bisexual men and heterosexual women, because heterosexual men, because we already know that they just based off the word heterosexuality and bisexuality, that there's acts that are there we know a heterosexual man is not participating in. So heterosexual people, or the concept of heterosexuality, unfortunately, is all encompassing, and it kind of is assumed. A heterosexual person, we know that there's going to be heterosexual sex, vaginal, penile penetration. There's going to be cunnilingus. There's going to be fellatio, right? Some cuddling, blah, 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 blah. That's heterosexual sex. That's the only type of sex I'm comfortable with. That's it. I don't do anal. I don't do all these other things. And I'm not assuming that anybody else does those things. I would reject a heterosexual man who does those same things. If a heterosexual man told me he do anal, he's not on my dating list anymore. Heterosexual man want to do certain things, he's not on my dating list anymore, because I need somebody whose sexual reality is aligned with mine. The same way that the LGBTQ community is sorting through sexual acts, that's the same way that I'm sorting through sexual acts. And I just need somebody who's in complete alignment with me in that way. So that, to me, that is a privilege that is not being afforded to heterosexual women within this conversation. And I find that disheartening, because we know historically women have never been able to decide what they are allowed to do or like sexually, or explore their sexuality. And I find that, I hate that. I was trying to do some research. I was trying to do some research about women's sexuality. What do we know about women's desires historically? And there's virtually no information, right? Because we know that women's sexuality has been policed, it has been pathologized, and it has been repressed. That is the historical reality of women. right? We know very little about ourselves as an entire group. And maybe you can look at what some women have been afforded to do at some point in history, but it's not a catch all thing where we can, unlike men, where we can look down history as a streamline and see what men have been doing all throughout history. And what we do know is that men have been extremely fluid, okay? Men have been having sex with men, women, prostitutes, slaves, and they've been pedophiles. Okay, people told me to stop saying children and start saying it, and you're absolutely right. Pedophiles. We know they've been pedophiles. So when y'all talk about um men being oppressed sexually or women oppressing men for not wanting to be with them, I think y'all sound ridiculous as fuck. I do. Because men ain't never been oppressed. And as a woman, I don't have the institutional, political, or social power to oppress a man. Now, if not giving a man this good cat is oppressing, well then he oppressed. I don't know what to tell you, but I'm not finna unoppress his ass. That's just off the table. He gonna remain oppressed, boo. This my cat, and I don't give it to everybody. I really don't give it to anybody. Anybody who's been here long enough knows I've been celibate for 7 years. I'm not coming off this good cat for nothing. For nothing. I got a perfect man in my mind, and unless he come and can't nobody get it. Real shit. That's a Fendi fact. I reject men for less. Honestly, like I keep telling people, like I reject men every day. I reject 50 men. Like I only choose one out of 50. That's it. Like genuinely, every day I reject the man, quite literally 3 or 4, and I will reject more if I can. If I had to go outside more, I would reject more. Dating is inherently exclusionary, you know. And there are just I'm looking for a reality where somebody's mind is completely framed around heterosexual dynamics. People shame women for not wanting the benefits of patriarchy, right? I hate this choice patriarchy shit, right? When talking about deconstructing patriarchy, they're like, well, women still want men to provide, women still want men to be this. What makes you think that men doing that couldn't exist outside of a patriarchal system? What makes you think that only a patriarchy is where men provide, or where men are protectors, or where men are masculine? Men can very well be those things within a matriarchy, and they motherfucking will be. Okay, I'm telling y'all, I'm getting ready to start a political movement, and whatever the fuck I say a man gonna be, that's what the fuck he gonna be. Um, that's how I think it has to be. For women to really escape patriarchy, we have to stop thinking that there's possible for equality within the system. Nonetheless, okay. Back to my original conversation. So the concept of sexuality is fairly new. It's all about sexual acts. And so it's really just about alignment. And I just want y'all to think about that more when thinking about women. But I also want us to talk about this. I'm not with all that fluid shit, right? Y'all can say that you're rejecting someone. You can say it's purity culture. You can say whatever you want, but baby, sex over here might be a little pure. I don't know. I'm not into purity culture because I think purity culture and means that you're enforcing your worldview on other people, and I'm not. My worldview, my sexual view, my sexual that's me. That's my life. That's what I do with my body. I'm not trying to get anybody else to do it. So it's not a culture, but I don't have sex with a lot of men. I don't have sex often. I'm not into hookup culture. I don't think it's beneficial to women. But if women want to engage, that's their business. How can I say if sex is harming you? There's no way for me to know that. So for me, hookup culture was a harm because I'm not oriented that way, right? I'm not oriented to have sex with a man in a casual situation. Emotions get involved for me. Um, it's just too deep for me to let my body, my vessel be involved with the man, and we not be doing more than just hooking up. So if that makes you feel like I'm a purist or whatever, I can't argue with that. That's your opinion. We're all entitled to our opinions, but this is my body and I'm entitled to, police it and govern it as I see fit. So yeah. But I want to talk about sexual fluidity, monogamy, and heterosexuality. Because one thing that we do not talk about is how these things directly correlated to women's rights. So a lot of people like to talk about the criminalization of homosexuality, but they never talk about how that had indirectly led to women's suffrage. So here is basically what y'all need to understand. Monogamy is a new concept. Monogamy is not this ancient concept. So when I hear people or I read queer discourse like Adrienne Rich talking about compulsory heterosexuality, she is viewing that from only the confinement of the time that she lived in. Women have been monogamous, right? Women have been in a one-way monogamous situation with men for millennia, right? Men have been doing whatever they want. Like I said, men have been having sex with men, women, prostitutes, slaves, and they've been pedophiles. I didn't say this, right? But women were forced to be in these situations, okay? When they criminalized homosexuality, and I'm not saying that's right, that's wrong as fuck. They should have never did that. But when they did that, when they criminalized homosexuality, not only did they criminalize homosexuality, they criminalized prostitution, they enacted marriage laws, right? And so a lot of people like to think, oh, well, this was about religion, it was about making it a sin. Y'all have to understand that the church is an institution of power, right? What y'all call sin is really just creating moral, legal code through a religious framework. I don't know why people don't understand that. The Bible exists to create a legal framework within inside of a religious system. That's it. Okay. It's trained to indoctrinate your brain to not do what they consider crimes, but just inside of a religious sense. Okay. So the criminalization of all of those things were to promote reproductive to promote reproduction, right? To get men to reproduce with women so that they can control the economy of lineage, but also have a, military force and a laboring force, right? Because if women aren't giving children, there's no laboring force. I don't know why people think, I don't know what people think that a patriarchy is, but the patriarchy is the control of women's bodies to control the world. Okay. The world is controlled through women's bodies. As long as the reproduction of women is controlled, or you can control women, you can control the world, because women create the labor force. I've said that all systems of power are dependent on women bearing children. Slavery was dependent on women bearing children. Capitalism is dependent on women bearing children because you need a labor force. All systems of power, the military needs a labor force. That means women have to have children. So at the end of the day, the backbone of all societies is women building children. The patriarchy runs on enforcing and controlling women's bodies. That's it. That's all. So when they created, or when they outlawed those laws, it indirectly gave women the ability to fight for women's suffrage, because now men only had access to one woman, right? So they had to invest in one woman. This is when they created stuff like the dowry, and they created all of these things so that men had to purposely invest in women and children, because a lot of men were refusing to marry. They were fucking women, they were getting women period, they were having sex with men, but they weren't marrying. The system needed to regulate marriage, because marriage has always and will always be an economic institution. Yes, marriage can be for love, but ultimately marriage is an economic institution. So I always say, if you're going to get married, make sure your ducats is right, because you're economically linking yourself to somebody. That's another conversation for another day, but just remember that. So it is the buttoning up of men's sexuality that led to the rights of women. Okay? It is because you could take a man to court for his sexuality or for cheating, or all these different things, which women rarely did, by the way. When you actually look at the history of the decriminalization of homosexuality, it was overwhelmingly men reporting men so that they could steal their political power, seize their wealth, their household, and their businesses. That is the historical record. So when I say that homophobia and I'm going to make a whole separate video about this, but when I say that homophobia is a patriarchal institution for men to control men, that's what it is. But regardless, this opened the door for women's suffrage because men needed heirs and they needed women to be involved in the system. It gave women the leeway, the leverage to ask for more rights. And so for me, when I think about a sexually fluid man, I'm not saying that bisexual men can't be loyal. In fact, the statistics prove that bisexual men are more loyal than heterosexual men, and more likely to reproduce and all of these different things and blah, 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 blah. That don't matter to me. I don't care. I just don't like the idea that my man will be with a man. Like, that's not sexually attractive to me. And I keep telling y'all, it's no intellectualizing my way out of it. But also, it might be, back to the conversation I was just saying, it might be linked to the fact that men's sexual fluidity is directly linked to women's oppression, right? The more sexually fluid or freedom and constraints, the less constraints that men have had through history, the more women have been oppressed. So in my mind, dating a man who's all loosey goosey somehow gonna lead to my oppression somehow. And I don't know if I'm logically making that connection or I'm only making that connection because I did some research. Because before I read that research, I really didn't think that. I just didn't want a bisexual man. Still don't, by the way. And so I often feel like when queer studies people, the gender the gender policy people are always telling, heterosexual women to unpack that. That's their favorite rule. I don't know what fucking book they read that says that, but the fact that it's always unpack that is really scary to me. Like, y'all are so severely indoctrinated yourselves, because I don't like the fact that it's always the same talking points. Like, when you watch these videos, they're always the same fucking talking points. It's annoying to me. But so for me, I don't want to date. I do link the sexual fluid nature of men somehow, some way, to the destruction of women. I do, right? Because we already know that when men have more access to women, society collapse, women's rights collapse. I even think about hookup culture, right? Or the introduction of dating, right? The easier it is for men to get access to sex, the harder it becomes for women to coexist with men. That's just how it seems. And so for me, the man that I'm allowed to have sex with, he gotta be sexually disciplined in every way. And that includes heterosexuality, right? His sex has to be so oriented, it almost has to be procreative in nature. That nigga, he gotta wanna fuck, he gotta wanna be with somebody he only wanna procreate with. So like, for me, dating is inherently exclusionary. I'll tell you all the time, like, I don't date men who had sex within the last 2 weeks. I don't date men who watch porn. I don't date all types of men. There is all types of sexual behavior that I will exclude from a man. I don't care. I don't care. Because you're supposed to be, as a woman, we're supposed to be making it hard for these men. The easier it is for men in society to do anything to get what they want, especially when the vast majority of men just want sex, the easier it is for men to get sex in this society, the harder it will be for women to negotiate their autonomy. I don't want to negotiate shit. I want to strip away everything these motherfucking men love and make it hard as fuck and make them beg for their motherfucking rights. How about that? That's how I feel, right? Except when I say rights, I mean access to this coochie. But this is what they're crying about: access to fucking coochie. And they're like, well, men deserve access to love and da da da. I'm like, well, if they like both men and women, and I'm just one woman who doesn't want to give them love, then they have access to love. If they are truly interested in romantic relationships with men as well, not having access to women really shouldn't do anything to them. That's how I see it, right? But what we know is, this is what we know historically: men want to be able to procreate, right? A lot of these bisexual men, and like I said, I'm not making blanket statements. I've been through the Reddit chats. I know women who date bisexual men, and it's always the same story. These men want to be with men. They want to be with men sexually, but they ultimately want to end up with women and have kids. Now, we know from the phenomenon of men having sex with men, and let's be clear, down low men are men having sex with men. I know a lot of people aren't uh familiar with that term because it's a CDC term, because men are now selectively identifying instead of talking about the sexual acts that they engage in, right? Which is why I say we need to go back to sexual act based identities instead of identities surrounding who you think you are, because I don't care who you think you are. I do care about what you do. What you do is important to this relationship if you're going to be in one with me. And so when we look at the numbers of men having sex with men, they're all married to women. Why are they married to women when they want to have sex with men? Because they want to have the patriarchal vision of a wife and kids, because a wife and kids is the center of patriarchy. Even when men could do whatever they want, even when a man could have sex with a slave, have sex with a prostitute, have sex with another man, the crux of his manhood was is passing down his lineage. So he needed a wife. Men will always need women because women give them heirs. Patriarchy is all about having heirs. And so you need women to have heirs. And so a lot of these bisexual men want to be able to continue to fuck men and be with women. And I don't know. Uh I had never dealt with a bisexual man, so I don't know. But when you look at the data, or when you look at the lived experiences of a lot of women, that's what they're talking about. Now, this is my last talking point because this is the one that's most important to me. One of the primary like weaponizations or like talking points in this conversation was that men are DL because women don't want to be with bisexual men. And so we're contributing to men being in the closet because we don't want to be with them. Men have always been having sex with men before homophobia was even a thing, right? Before it was illegal or a sin for men to be with men, it's always been about what men think about it. Men have never cared about what women think. So to place it upon a group of people who have never had the historical right to bodily autonomy is absolutely insane. Men ain't never gave a fuck about what women thought before. Why the fuck would they give a fuck about it now? Women are not upholding the patriarchy in that way. Homophobia is a male institution for men to police men. 100%. It is not women's jobs to make men comfortable with their sexuality, to make men comfortable with who they are. Men have to do that on their own terms. When men are ready to do that, collectively they will come out. But I'm going to tell you what I know. A lot of them are never coming out because it's not about being comfortable in their sexuality, because they don't have a sexuality. They're heterosexual. They're going to continue to be heterosexual. They don't think that they're gay because they don't want to be with you men. They don't want to be with you. So for any DL man or for any gay man or bisexual men under the impression that the reason why men or won't come out or whatever DL nigga then boosted your head up and convinced you that if women would just accept him, he would come out. It's a lie, boo. You're being gaslit. And now you're gaslighting the rest of us into believing why that's why they won't come out. It's not even partly true. Sure, there are closeted men. We know that those are closeted men, but a lot of closeted men, they not even messing with women. But as for these down low demons, because that's what they are. They're demons. They're with women. They're lying about. Not only are they lying about their sexuality, because it's one thing to lie about your sexuality, and this is the part of the conversation that y'all don't listen to or that y'all don't speak of, because these men aren't just lying about their sexuality. They're in relationship with women and cheating on the women and fucking men while they are in supposed to be monogamous relationships with women. So that talking point never makes sense to me because the women would not know that these men were DL if these men weren't cheating on them. So y'all trying to gaslight women into making it seem like it's their fault. It's never gonna fly with me. I'm never gonna buy into that. So yeah, it's not women's fault. Men have to hold men accountable. And my thing is, if you're a gay man and you're sleeping with a down low man, especially if he's in a relationship and you know he's in a relationship, you're part of the problem. You're a misogynist. You're upholding misogyny. You're upholding the patriarchy because that's the whole what the patriarchy is about. Men having access to women while still having access and sex to everyone else. That is literally the crux of the entire fucking patriarchy. So yeah, I'm thoroughly tired of this conversation. I know that this conversation is going to come back up because it always does. I mean, literally, y'all are so obsessed with who women sleep with while simultaneously picking and choose who y'all get to sleep with and being picky as hell and upholding gender norms and all of this. Y'all have too much intercommunity bullshit that be going on to be worried about what the fuck straight women are doing in their bedrooms. Quite literally. But I'll say this. If you feel like that I can't be an ally and not want to date bisexual men, that's you, boo. That's you. But I'm still not changing it. So good luck to you. All right. Bye, you guys. Thank you for watching my YouTube video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram. But don't forget to read my Substack about this, you guys. I think that you'll enjoy it and I think it'll bring some perspective to this conversation. Um, but yeah, it's your girl Boomy, and I'm out. Mwah.